Second day of Falcons Training Camp is in the books, so we are going to share everything we learned through 2 days so far. So make sure to subscribe. That way you don't stay in the dark when it comes to Falcons Training Camp news, notes, nuggets, all that good stuff all summer long. Arthur Smith's second day of 2023 Atlanta Falcons Training Camp is over with, and we've learned some more things about this new season and this new team, albeit it's just the first 2 days of training camp. No pads are on. You're not really going to get any big sort of details or signs as to who will be where, but it's always a good, takeaway and breath of football air because we have been starved for football for a long time. But let's start things off with some somewhat injury news. Not really injury news, I guess, but more absent news. So Josh Kendall tweeted out, it doesn't sound like the Falcons expect Calais Campbell back on the practice field for at least 10 days. Head coach Arthur Smith said that. Atlanta not concerned about Campbell's availability for the season. I have no idea what is going on with Calais Campbell. It sounds like it's a personal matter. Hopefully everything is okay on the home front for Campbell. But the guy's a vet. He's been around the block for a long time. He really doesn't need to be there in early or late July, early training camp to get the swing of things once the ball gets going in September. Now, some first note I have to share with you guys here comes out of the secondary because several members of this new no-fly zone forming in Atlanta, courtesy of Hartsfield-Jackson, flashed during the second day of training camp. The rookie, Clark Phillips, who was a day 3 draft pick, or day 2, whatever it was, out of Utah last year, 4th-round pick, right at the beginning of day 3. He was a big-time winner coming out of day 2 of training camp, had a nice battle down the field with Drake London, batted the ball away, ended up catching it himself. So Clark Phillips establishing himself in this secondary. This was a player that if you were watching our draft content back in March and April, Rolly and I were very high on. I thought he might be a good 2nd or 3rd round selection. So for Atlanta to find him in round 3, I think he's probably going to start off in that nickel spot. And if Okudah doesn't work out on the outside long term, him and A.J. Terrell could be your 2 outside corners. Now, speaking of Jeff Okudah, I think he's kind of the X factor this season, right? Had a nice pass breakup against Drake London in the end zone. I mean, we're talking about an all-time athletic freak when he came out of Ohio State to Detroit. Unfortunately, injuries got in his way. We did our injury draft yesterday, Rolly. Okudah could have been a good pick if he, unfortunately, never really works out in the NFL. But fingers crossed there's a turnaround in ATL because if he gets back to that elite status, right, A.J. Terrell, who kind of sunk a little bit last year down the cornerback rankings once Hayward went down. If A.J. Terrell gets back to being a top 10 cornerback and Jeff Okudah really turns his career around, you added Mike Hughes and Clark Phillips. Even though the NFC South has really no good quarterback play, it's going to be on full display when they go up against the Falcons 6 times throughout the season. I know this sounds a bit ambitious, but I actually do believe that Okudah and Clark Phillips could be game changers for Atlanta this upcoming season. Because what is the root of the Falcons' success in 2023? It's through the ground game, right? The offensive line and the running back room headlined by Bijan Robinson. But you got to have a good defense if you want to stay competitive all year long. And on the defensive side of the football, it's probably not going to be the pass rush that carries the weight. I think it's going to be the secondary, and I think it's going to be a group effort. It's not just going to be A.J. Terrell and Jessie Bates. You're going to need other contributors. And if Okudah returns to that top 10 form, and if Clark Phillips has a strong rookie season, this will be a very frustrating defense to go up against in Atlanta. So grade the Falcons cornerback room. I know we're getting into the nitty-gritty, but this is what we do as football fans. We are so hungry for week 1. And so we're going to talk about every single position group until we get to September. So A, B, C, D, or F. For me, I would give it a solid B, right? I think there's a lot of high upside, high ceiling with Jeff Okudah potentially with a breakout year. A.J. Terrell, if he gets back to that top 10 form we saw in his second season, and then you toss in strong play from Clark Phillips and then add in Mike Hughes for shits and giggles, this could be a very good secondary. Now, speaking of the secondary, Jaylinn Hawkins, second day of training camp, second interception. This time it came from Taylor Heinicke, so be nice to Desmond Ridder. He didn't throw a pick to Jaylinn Hawkins today, but we have more on Desmond Ridder later on. But Jaylinn Hawkins is sort of the third safety in this room. It's Jessie Bates and it's Richie Grant. And then you've got Hawkins and Helms, I believe, battling for that third safety spot, whether it's, hey, if someone gets hurt, who's that first guy to step up? Or if Ryan Nielsen wants to toss out a 3-safety look, who's that first guy off the bench? You are seeing a lot of NFL defenses implement 3-safety looks because they know when the offenses continue to pass it, you need more guys in coverage. So that's where you see a third safety. But he, as a third safety, could be very dangerous. It was a rocky season last year for Hawkins, but hopefully a good training camp and maybe a little bit less pressure and not being a starting safety could bring some better play out of him in small doses. Note number 2 from day 2 of training camp, the defensive line gets some praise. Arthur Smith and even Drake London have noted how well the defensive line have played through the first 2 days. No pads are on, so it's very difficult for defensive linemen to make any sort of big contribution or get any sort of a headway, if you will. But when you are getting praise in a non-padded practice, you're clearly doing something right. Kevin Knight tweeted out, Arthur Smith said, the defensive line absolutely feels different this year. Size-wise, depth, I love that energy, both on the offensive line and the defensive line. And here's what Drake London had to comment on. That front is mean, man. It's very, very mean. And this is what I love to see because it might not have a premier free agent signing, which sure we would have liked, but man, it's got some dudes. It's got some guys. I mean, Grady Jarrett is a star in my eyes in the defensive tackle position at the NFL. But David Onyemata, he comes over from New Orleans. Calais Campbell brings some of that veteran swagger and presence. And then at the second level, hopefully you get another strong season from Lorenzo Carter. Maybe a resurgence for Bud Dupree. You chime in with Caden, Elliss, Troy Andersen. They might not be recognizable names league-wide, but I promise you this much. When we get to week 8 or 9, more people are going to appreciate the defense Atlanta has. And then there's Zach Harrison, a rookie out of Ohio State who sacked Taylor Heineke. Can't really sack anyone in training camp, but if you get there under a certain amount of time, they credit you with a sack. He got some pressure on Desmond Ridder. Remember, Zach Harrison was a player coming out of Columbus that had all the intangibles, just didn't have the production, just didn't have the stats to match it. Hopefully that changes in the NFL and the coaching staff can get him those big numbers in the sack department. Before we get on to the rest of our training camp news and notes, I just want to reiterate that there is an awesome deal with our friends over at Fanatics where you can get this really cool Falcons retro t-shirt. And the sale doesn't last forever over on Fanatics, so if you're even thinking about getting it, just do it now. That way, if you put it off for another 2 or 3 days and the sale's over, well, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot because you're going to end up paying $10, $15 more. So go to chatsports.com/ATL Retro. I've included that link in the comments and the description of today's video. Saving best for last. Not really. Ridder's up and down. Let's just call it what it is. It's only been 2 days of training camp. You cannot make mountains out of hills. It's just 2 days. He has flashed with his legs. He is solid in the short and intermediate passes, but he has struggled with the deep ball accuracy. And if we're being honest, you should be good at short and intermediate passes. Those are carnival games. It's the downfield accuracy that needs to come along. And if you can't do it that well in training camp when the pads aren't on and there's no real pass rush, I'm going to be very scared when the regular season rolls around and there is a real pass rush. It's only 2 days. So I'm not standing here going, we got to find a new quarterback, put in Heineke, make him the starter now. But if this trend does continue throughout the summer, Ridder's not some NFL vet that can just shake it off, right? If this does not improve as we get into early August, mid-August, and at the end of the preseason, yeah, I'm going to have a decent panic level because Ridder is not someone who's established in this league and has shown us year after year that he can produce in the regular season. We really don't know a whole lot about Desmond Ridder. So these training camp reps are a lot more valuable and a lot more weighted than, say, a Kirk Cousins training camp rep or something like that. But right now, I just want to rally around the new quarterback in Atlanta. Let's show the guy some love. Spam his new jersey number 9 in the comments section below. Let's let him know that Dirty Birds have his back all training camp long. Show the guy some love. Type 9 down below. Note number 4 from day 2 of camp, the offensive weapons flashed. Jonnu Smith, and Carlos Washington Jr. Get a pen and paper out and write that name down, because if you want to sound smart the next time you're at Taco Mac or something and everyone asks who's an under-the-radar guy to keep an eye on, Carlos Washington Jr. is that guy. I think he's going to make the roster, actually. I'll go as far to say the UDFA running back Carlos Washington Jr. makes this roster. He might not have a huge role. I mean, this is what we do in training camp. A lot of the lower-level names, they get more of a spotlight because everyone knows what to expect from the stars, get more time in the news cycle. But I think Carlos Washington could have a very good training camp and very solid preseason and sneak on to this 53-man roster. As for some return man duty specialist notes to hit on here, looks like cornerback Mike Hughes, D. Alford, Penny Hart, Xavier Malone, and Scotty Miller, along with Bijan Robinson, are the punt returners on day 2. It's only day 2. Arthur, quick word of advice. Do not put Bijan Robinson in harm's way for a punt return. Don't do it. If you do, you better fair catch it every single time, because I don't care about an 8 to 12-yard return from Bijan in the punt return game. Save him for the ground game, because this team's success is rooted in the ground game, and you will need him over there. So don't have him taking unnecessary hits in punt return. Save that for Penny Hart. Now, to wrap up the show, we've got a fun draft. I'm very excited for it. I don't know if Rolly feels the same way. I feel like Rolly knows he just had a bad draft before we even kick it off. But maybe you guys will disagree.
You know, sometimes you just don't have your fastball, and today was one of those days where I didn't have my fastball.
Yeah, so we did mall court, food court specials, basically like staples of a food court in a mall, and Rolly had the 1-1, and oh boy.
And I went Burger King. Yeah, it's not great. I guess this is just a New York thing because that's where I'm from. But I just remember getting a lot of Burger King when I went to the mall as a kid. Those Coke slushies. But I guess that was not a nationwide thing.
Oh, my goodness. You passed up the clear and obvious 1-1, which I slammed home. Auntie-ants. That's the whole point of going to the mall. It is an absolute institution in American childhood. When your mom takes you to the mall because she has to make some returns, you go to Auntie Anne's. You can't pass it up. It's the best part of the mall. It's my favorite store in the mall. Auntie Anne's, no doubter.
I kind of cheated with this one, but Petey kind of agreed with me. It's one like the token Chinese restaurant.
What is that picture?
It's Famous Wok. Have you ever had Famous Wok?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so it's like every mall court has a different type of Chinese food, Chinese restaurant.
Yep.
So it's hard to lock down one, but I was like, there's always that one Chinese restaurant. So PD allowed me to take that market, I guess.
Agreed. It's kind of true for airports as well.
Yeah.
It's always there. My second selection, I was just happy to see it there. Chick-fil-A. The longest line guaranteed every time, but it's like Disney. People still get in the line, and they are rewarded when they get to the front. So Chick-fil-A couldn't pass on it.
Yeah, with my third pick, I went Mrs. Fields cookies. I mean, as a kid, just loving cookies. I mean, if you guys saw me, I'm a big guy, so I ate a lot of cookies. I like Mrs. Fields.
I'll also lump in like Great American Cookie, all of those type of specialty cookie stores. I'll give you that. My third selection, 6 overall, Michael Scott's favorite, New York local slice, Sbarro. It is an absolute staple of food courts in the mall, and it's the go-to pizza spot in a mall if you are looking to catch a quick slice of cheese pizza.
Yeah, I guess I cornered the dessert market here as I went with Fields Cookies, and then I took Cinnabon, my last pick. I'm not happy with my Burger King selection at 1-1 over Auntie Anne's, but I think I kind of
your last pick's better than your first pick.
My rallied the troops and took 3 good ones after Burger King.
Yeah, Cinnabon's a very solid selection. To round it out, I'm not a huge fan of it, but it is an absolute must-have in a mall, and that would be Orange Julius. It's a great spot to get a smoothie, especially if you're in middle school, like we all do in middle school, and just run around the mall and jump on things. Orange Julius smoothie is a good thing to have in your right hand. But that's going to do it for us on today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the content we provide here, consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to producer Rolly and myself, because if we can pick up more subscribers, we can get more studio space, and you guys can get more content. So it's a beautiful little chat sports circle of life here we got going on.